Jack, the Groin Kick Chronicles have reached the top 50. Top 50. Everyone just heard the games. Let's go through them, and then we can dive in a little bit deeper ourselves. Number 50, Mike Riley's first loss to Iowa in 2015. Number 49, a 2022 loss to Minnesota. Number 48, Matt Rule's fifth game, a 2023 loss to Michigan. Number 47, the 2021 defeat to Purdue. Number 46, the 2017 loss to the Oregon Ducks. Number 45, the first game of the shortened COVID season, 2020 Ohio State. Number 44, 2018 Wisconsin. Number 43, a 2021 loss up in Minneapolis to Minnesota. Number 42, the 2018 Iowa game, and there will be a tie actually for 40th place. Ooh. You'll hear the other 40 on the other side, the lone tie of the whole rankings.
Wait, how did you tie break them?
Well, I just did it in the order that they showed up on the Google sheet, Jack.
Cool.
Thank you for asking.
I thought you had a fun system for
2019
that.
Ohio State. We had it at the very end of our previous episode. Multiple games on here that you were essentially flabbergasted, like, what the hell is going on? Where do we begin with the start of the top 50 groin kick losses?
Well, once again, I think I've done this in some of our previous episodes, but then this is kind of how you read lists, but the one that jumped out at me immediately was the one on the top of the list for me was 2015 Iowa. Now, I understand, I don't, this is probably where that belongs, and this is one that's personal to me again. Yes.
Family.
Because Iowa,
Thanksgiving.
with family, and just in that missed opportunity category where it felt like, man, if Nebraska just stick it to them and right away set the tone for this new era. And it was when played the Black Friday game at night last year, but that 2015 game, it ended when it was dark.
That's true. It was a 2:30 kickoff.
Stadium. And so it was a late game. The weather was horrendous, just completely horrendous.
It was really cold. Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was very cold. And I was actually driving to Iowa away from that game while it started and watched the end of it. Oh, if you went through my full tweets from that game, the TVs didn't work in the motel room. Did you see any of those? I was going crazy. Going completely insane.
Jack, isn't it interesting? So there are two Iowa games on this collection of 10 games. The 2015 loss, which was Mike Riley's first game, the first loss to Iowa, rather. The 2018 loss, which is Scott Frost's first loss to Iowa. And it's interesting because the 2015 defeat is the first of this kind of new era, right? Because Nebraska had gone 3-1 in the Bo Pelini era. They'd beaten them in 11 and 12 and 14, and then they had the loss in the hat swing game back in 2013. And so it's interesting that, I think these two games are properly placed and that there are some really bad Iowa games to come. That 2015 loss, they lose by 8 points. They're playing them close. Remember, that was the undefeated Iowa team.
That's the part I didn't mention.
That whole year was this build up to that game because people didn't think that Iowa was very good. Many debates about this. But also, do you remember that weird, like, why can't we be like Iowa? And it's like, wait a second. Iowa's been like a sub-500 program. Sean Eichhorst said it after he fired Bo Pelini. You heard that in the prologue episode. And so that season, I hate the 2015 season. I hate the discourse that surrounded that year. And so I guess it only could have ended with that loss. The one saving grace, I guess, is that they still went to a bowl game because of, remember, you got really deep into the APR weeds.
Yes.
There were a lot of tweets about APR back on Black Friday and that weekend back in 2015. But I think it's a proper spot for this loss, even though in the moment it really did feel like
I think the Noah Fant
awful.
thing was still fresh then, too.
Oh, yeah. And that's going to show up a little bit later on as well inside of this list. But, yeah, that was a real bad one, and you in particular with your Iowa foibles was an extra kick in the pills.
And as we bounce around the Iowa one, the other Iowa one, let's just talk about that now.
Yeah.
2018 and Scott Frost's first game against Iowa. That game, in terms of how it ended, how everything went down, that followed pretty clear groin kick script there.
Definitely.
Right? Like, there was just, I think, and it was against Iowa. Like, there's a part of me that does think this, I'm a little surprised this one isn't a bit higher. Now, again, you have that whole thing that came with most of those 2018 losses where it was like, well, things are about to take off.
Yeah.
Right? And I think everyone felt like that after that 2018 Iowa game, like, That's not going to happen next year at this time, right?
100%. The things that go against this game being as low as it is on the play-by-play basis, Iowa dominated. The total yard disparity wasn't like terrible in one way or the other. All of the usual factors are going to knock it up. It's a close loss. It's a hated opponent. But for the most part, that was a game that it just... I mean, Nebraska was trailing by 15 points.
Yeah, it was a comeback.
They have a great comeback in that one. And Jack, I know that my colleague in radio, Connor Happer, always talks about this game in the same way that I felt about it as I'm driving listening to Big Red Overreaction that afternoon. And that was, can 2019 start now?
Yeah.
Like we talked about it in our previous, or in the first episode, right? That Ohio State loss in 2018 was a moral victory game. This, I wouldn't say it was moral victory, but it was more, he's got him going in the right direction. And if you would have told me on that Black Friday in November of 2018 of what was to come, I wouldn't have believed you, because I thought that they played with heart. They fought back. They make it an interesting game. They make plays. And I mean, Jack, Adrian Martinez in that game, remember the plays and the swagger when he's scoring touchdowns. And that version turns into what happened in 19 and 20 is still like stunning to me all these years later.
Yeah, that has another one of those could have been landmark moments that we've talked about before, with that touchdown, right? Kind of stands over a guy in the end zone, if I recall, and then the two-point conversion to Kay Warner.
Oh
yes.
My gosh. Yeah, absolutely. So 2 Iowa games make an appearance on this one. Where shall we go next on the other 8 games as we get into the top 50?
I mean, we can just go back up to, maybe hit like 2022 Minnesota. What do you think about that one being there?
Well, people heard it in the clips just a few moments ago, but this one we did a watch party for in the I-80 Club, and Stu Manji, shout out Stu Manji. First of all, he helped out with the math of getting these rankings ready. But there's that incredible clip as we are begging Logan Smothers to run. You think that my internet is cut out, which has never happened before on any of our podcasts.
No,
I don't know why you would think that. That was a game late in the year as they are fighting for a bowl berth. They picked up those 2 early wins in the Mickey Joseph era. They just needed to find wins, and it seemed like that was going to be an opportunity for them to do so. And I remember that year, that was the first year that we were doing the pod together, and every week it was like the Big Ten West sucks. These teams are garbage. They're going to finally get a win. And that one, they played well early, and then Minnesota was able to just kind of lean on Nebraska like they have so often, and in the games that are on this list.
I mean, it was. I'm almost a little surprised it wasn't higher, because it followed the script pretty well.
Yeah.
In terms of a late, last drive play,
opportunity
where it was one possession game, opportunity to tie it. So, yeah, that was there. 2023 Michigan. This one I'm surprised isn't lower.
You think it should be like in the 60 or 70, like somewhere down there?
I'm a little surprised. Do you agree on that one?
Well, talk about a dominating performance by the Wolverines. This is one of the, a handful of games on this entire list, Jack, where it seems like Nebraska could get shut out. Joshua Fleeks, that has to be in the post-1996 Arizona State loss. In that era, this has to be like the latest score. Well, no, I guess the field goal against Oklahoma in 2004, but this is up there in terms of a late score that allows for Nebraska to keep their non-shutout streak alive. But yeah, that was one of those games where they were 2-2, but remember, those wins that they had coming into this game were very forgettable against Northern Illinois and La Tech after the 0-2 start. I remember that day just feeling not great about the game. And wasn't it like 1 billion degrees?
I was there. It was so hot. It was so hot. And I don't think anybody came in, even me. I think I had to kind of work myself into sort of thinking, hey, upsets happen all the time, right? Why not us? Why not now? And was a lot of reason, turns out.
Jack, the only reason that this game actually bumps up a little higher than we would have expected is in our post-game win probability, this gets an 8 out of 10, and you're saying, whoa, Nebraska had a chance to win? No, 8 is a rating because they had a 0 to 1% chance to win this game. It was such a dominating performance. This is actually one of 21 games on this list that has a post-game probability of 1% or less, and so yeah, they got absolutely dominated in that game. A couple of 2021 games in the top 50 now as we move on. And 2021, of course, is going to really make hay towards the top of the Groin Kick Chronicle charts. But the Purdue loss, the Minnesota loss, those came in the season when I know certainly on my radio show, I imagine that you were having conversations. We're all wondering if Scott Frost is gonna actually, make it to 2022. I'll say this: the 2021 loss to Purdue was the moment that I thought there's no way in hell they're going to bring him back. It dropped him to 3-6. They still had Ohio State to come. So basically, this was kind of that last game that if they don't win this, there's no way they're going to go to a bowl game. And Trev Alberts, I just mentioned it in the first part of this podcast. It's sources who were at a wedding that Trev Alberts was at for one of his children, and they're telling me like he's not really around right now at the reception. And so I'm working up all these ideas in my head of, is he making calls? What's going to happen? And a week later, we find out that no, Scott Frost is going to come back for another season.
Yeah, both of those games, I mean, had did cemented obviously what eventually was going to happen and the way that we looked at that year. But neither of them in their own right, and I'm talking about Purdue and Minnesota.
Yeah.
There's not just a lot of moments, really. Now, the Minnesota one, there's one I can think of, and that the thing that I think of is when Nebraska didn't run the ball at the goal line at Minnesota in that game.
Yeah, and Jock Ant trips and falls.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. Josh, I know we just, people listening right now just listened to some of the summary of that 2021 Purdue game. I don't remember. I remember watching the game. I remember what the day was like weather-wise. I can't really think of any plays from it, to be honest.
It's interesting, doing this project, I had those moments where, Jack, you tell me 2021 Iowa, I can get 5 plays in my head immediately, right? 2021 Michigan State, the same thing. Some of these games, though, like 2021 Purdue, I remember opening up the Husker Max page for it because that's where I would go and find my highlights and everything. And I'm like, wow, I forgot about that play. The play that sticks with me from this one is this weird Adrian Martinez interception where it was almost like an option pitch forward. And we didn't include the radio call, but Matt Davison had this visceral reaction to it of basically like, what is happening? What are you doing in that game? But you're right. Both of those games, like in a way, not so much workmanlike, but just very forgettable and I know that I felt this way in 2021. Yes, they're losing by a score, but watch the game. They're not really losing by a score in some of these matchups.
In what was a gut-wrenching season, I don't know. The games themselves, the experiences of the games themselves were not gut-wrenching. It was kind of what they meant that was gut-wrenching, I would say.
Yeah, 100%. So that's both of those two games. You said, Jack, on our previous episode that there were a couple in here that maybe you were surprised that we hadn't mentioned just yet. We have 4 games left to talk about. Which was the one that stood out to you in that regard?
So one of them was 2023 Michigan, but the other one's 2017 Oregon for sure.
How about the fact that
I thought that would be potentially maybe a bottom 10.
Yeah.
And so I'm really surprised to see what happened. And again, for those, well, you guys just listened to the show about it, but Nebraska kind of had a comeback. Like, I don't know if anyone ever believed in the comeback, but it kept getting a little bit more significant than you thought that it would, but you checked out of it so early. I mean, that's the game that I famously on Twitter put together a toilet while I listened in the second half because I quit watching and I put in and
I wish I would have had a toilet tweet in the
obligatory Jack Mitchell I'm surprised you didn't see any of the toilet tweets. But
the thing that bumped this up a little bit higher, because you're right, like it just has all these hallmarks, is the total yards disparity was so bad that it ended up knocking it up a few spots. The post-game win probability, like we just talked about with Michigan, was actually less than 1%, even though at the end the game is a 7-point game. But that was a barrage of points by Oregon in the second quarter. I was in the building for that one, and I remember going downstairs to get a beer at halftime, and I actually met up with a listener of my radio show for the first time there because him and I had been friends on Twitter. And we're just like, what is happening? This kind of sucks because you make a trip like that. You're so excited for it. And the game doesn't, it's 42-14. So you think the game is over. And they get a couple of scores early in the second half. And I know that in the moment it was like, okay, but Oregon's eventually going to pull away. Oregon never did. Like, it's so funny because it was like the best of both worlds, or the best and the worst of the Bob Diaco experience. First half, one of the worst halves of football, maybe the worst that he would have, right? They allowed 42 points. The second half, maybe the best half of football that his team played all year. But, they turn the ball over. They lose the ball. Right. Tanner Lee throwing it to the opposition.
It is what it is. What? There was, I think maybe that comeback was closer than anyone realizes, I think, maybe. At least, or maybe I should just talk
Jack,
for
they
myself.
get down by 14 so early in the second half, and it's a 7-point game with lots of time left.
Yeah.
And they do have the ball late, and they're driving, and then they're unable to do anything with it.
Okay. You talked me into it. It's proper.
One of the games that we have not talked about yet is we just have a few more on this episode. 2020 Ohio State. Jack, over the course of putting all of the numbers in on our sheet for this on Google, this 2020 Ohio State game was actually near or at the bottom for the first few inputs. We saved like the really horrible play category for later, which then really kind of locked everything in. But that 2020 Ohio State game, I remember a couple of things from this. The option pitch to Luke McCaffrey on the first drive that leads to like a 1st and goal. They score a couple plays later, and then the game is pretty much boring after that as Ohio State. They stiff arm Nebraska, but it's one of those COVID games, and it was thank God it's back, but also, wow, this is really, really bad.
Yeah, it's just, again, those games in 2020, it's just hard. They were such novelties, and especially that one because it was the first one, right?
Yeah.
You're like, you know what? I'm just glad they're here.
Yeah.
Just glad.
Even though they lost 52-17.
You know what? I don't usually act like this during games, but I kind of just want everyone to have fun, right? And I have something to watch on TV on a Saturday because it's already October by this point.
Yeah. 2 more. 2018 Wisconsin. I would say this is another really forgettable game in a stretch of this was the part of the 2018 season where it's just like, oh, okay, so I guess they're just going to lose every time they play. And like the Purdue game that we talked about on a previous episode, Wisconsin got up by so many points early that even when Nebraska was able to get within 2 scores in the second half, Wisconsin always had an answer for it every single time.
There's kind of a genre of early Scott Frost era night super cold games that are never close.
And this one definitely fits
one
that.
is one of those.
Wow, maybe that should have been an 8th category.
Yeah.
Night in the Scott Frost era when it's kind of cold. Finally, a tie for 40th as we finish up this episode. The 2019 Ohio State game, Jack. Game day was in town. We were all very, very excited for this one. And that game was over pretty much before it got started. And it's remembered, at least for me, by the drive where Nebraska started running the option that resulted in a turnover.
Which I was going to the bathroom during. I went up and went to the bathroom, and I had some tweet, which I'm kind of surprised wasn't the one you used. I said something like, I went into the bathroom, and all of a sudden Nebraska is running the option. Was that urinal time machine or something like?
I wish I would have used that.
I don't know. I think I had something. I think I used the words urinal time machine, but I came out and whoa! It was another one of those deals. Like, man, what is the deal with me leaving and things getting good?
Yeah,
right?
and everyone's like, go to the lead center, please.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Break
The
in.
lead center, the toilet, putting in a toilet,
Time travel,
all of these things, But that was about it. And of course, the college game day, the hype, everything. And just to lay that big of an egg, that you knew it was a long shot to win, but you at least thought the sort of, it might happen portion would last a little bit longer. Yeah. That's probably what made that game more palatable is you didn't ever get a chance to believe in that game ever. There was none.
My now wife and I were sitting in East Stadium up in my parents' tickets. And I remember early on in the game, probably the 3rd drive for the Buckeyes, we started playing a game with each other of how many plays will it take Ohio State to score a touchdown. And I think we often nailed it pretty much right on the button, and we might have overestimated it a couple of times. Like, it was that type of, it's surprising that we haven't gotten to 2017 Ohio State yet. That's going to come, actually, spoiler alert, in our next episode. But that game, in my opinion, is very similar to that Buckeyes loss in 2017 because every single drive, they just move right down the field, and Nebraska is able to do nothing. Like, that is the worst Adrian Martinez game of his career. It's either that or the 2018 Michigan game. He was horrible in that one. And we actually left at halftime, and we got home before the game was over because the first half is unfolding in such a way where it's like, I don't want to be here and waste time and then have to deal with traffic on the way home. I'll just go home now.
Yeah, I can't believe. Honestly, that's one I can't almost believe is that high, to be honest. The 2017 one.
Yeah.
And by the way, back on the 19 one real quick, fun fact about that one, Justin Fields' parents stayed at my mom's house for that game because she VRBOs her upstairs room.
That's so exciting.
Yes, I guess.
And then he absolutely rocked Nebraska.
Sure, they had a fun time coming into. I know. I was like, oh, should we sit down there when we get there in all our Husker gear and make it super awkward? And we didn't. And I'm glad we didn't.
Yeah, probably for the best. So that is 50 through, again, like I said, a tie for 40. And so when we return, Jack, on our next episode, we will get into the top 40. And so I ask you now to take a look. I forgot to move it there before the episode began, so you're going to have to reach quite a.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, it's really far away. Did a great job in planning on this one. You got it yet? So this is as we move into the top 40, and anything to react to as we get ready for our next episode.
I was wondering where 39 was going to. I mean, I've been wondering about where 39 would be for sure, and I didn't know, and I gotta think about that one. Oh, 38. Oh, okay.
Yeah, how about that? That's kind of a surprise as well, given the team and how Nebraska fans feel about that.
Wow, I am surprised about that one. Okay. Yeah, okay. 33, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay. That's the first time, all right.
How about number 34? I'm stunned that game is as high as it is. I'll say this as
you're right. That was one that we brought up as we'll get into this next episode, but that was one that we brought up as maybe one of the least painful of all of them.
And a tease for those who know the lore of the I-80 Club, or at least Jack Mitchell and I, because you're freaks like us. Wang Nachos. That will be the tease for the next episode. So we will dive into the 40 through 31 games when we return on the Groin Kick Chronicles. As always, Jack, a true pleasure. And again, I feel like we're barely into the pain that we have kind of built this project on.
We're really gonna, once we get into numbers that start with a 2, it's gonna start getting rough. I want to fix a drink for those.
Yeah, certainly do. So that is coming up next time on the Groin Kick Chronicles. As always, HuskerMax.com. If you would like to remember some of these plays, you're saying, guys, I'm kind of like you. I don't remember anything about these games. Well, the highlights and lowlights are all there for you at HuskerMax.com. We will get into the top 40 next time here on the Groin Kick Chronicles.